Hello and welcome to another edition of the Ag+Bio+Science podcast, where we take a focus on the convergence of food, science, technology, and the impact they're having on Indiana currently, but also out into the future. My name is Gerry Dick. I'm the host of the podcast and very pleased to be joined this time by John Hanak. John is the managing director of Purdue Ventures, part of the Purdue Foundry in West Lafayette. And John, welcome. Good to see you again.
Yeah, thanks, Gerry. Good to see you.
First of all, I want to give folks an introduction to you. You've been on the scene for a number of years. We've known each other for a number of years. Give us a little background on John Hanak.
Well, I've been at Purdue since 2005. Prior to that, a career in the steel industry. Ultimately ended up as statewide director of the Purdue Technology Centers, running our various tech centers across the state, Maryville, West Lafayette, Indianapolis, and New Albany. But then 5 years ago, when Mitch Daniels came aboard as president, that was really the impetus for us to put a focus on commercializing technologies coming out of the university through startups. So our focus over the last 5 years, while we're still running the research parks and the tech centers, has really been the earlier stage commercializing of technologies, and therein was lied the creation of the Foundry. Greg Deason, Tim Peoples, and myself kind of moved from the research parks to the Foundry, put together the programs, and kind of evolved that as we went. And as a result, over the last 5 years now, we've created 125 startups.
Wow.
That are commercializing Purdue intellectual property, and a similar number of startups that come to us from throughout the community.
This whole idea of commercializing, IP and ideas, it sounds like a natural thing, but it was not in Indiana, the state of Indiana's DNA for a long time. I think Martin Jiske and then obviously Mitch Daniels have just really lit a fire under that and put a real focus on that in Indiana.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of that does go back to the Dr. Jiske years. He was really the driver behind the growth of the research parks and the commercialization of technology. So much of that goes back to the Bayh-Dole Act, when universities could commercialize technologies and reap some of the benefits of that. But it really took decades, I think, throughout the country for universities to come to grips with how to go about doing that. The Foundry kind of represents more of a recognition that we need to move these technologies into the marketplace and let the market test them, let the market tell us their viability, their investability. And therein was why we created Purdue Ventures, which is part of the Foundry. The Purdue Ventures side of the Foundry really focuses on access to capital and access to talent. Those are the two really kind of secret ingredients to a successful startup: capital, but particularly talent as well. So we spend a lot of our time. We run 3 of our own seed funds, but we also provide a lot of access through our network to venture capital, angel investors, and those types of investors.
Talk about the creation of the ag-celerator fund to help ag-bio-science startups get funding. Talk about how that is being embraced and the whole idea, the concept behind it.
Yeah, so 2 or 3 years ago, part of President Daniels' Big Moves program was to put more capital into the commercialization of technologies that impacted the plant sciences. That resulted in a lot of changes in the College of Agriculture, the hiring of some world-class, additional world-class professors, and also the building, and it's kind of provided the seed capital for the Genomics Center. But $2 million of that money was dedicated to be invested in the commercialization of technologies that impact the plant sciences. So quite literally, the College of Agriculture came to us and said, okay, we have some funds to invest in companies. We want to transfer that over to the Purdue Research Foundation, but how do you recommend going about doing that? So we sat down and through a series of planning meetings determined that the best way to do it would be to actually create an accelerator. We felt that the plant sciences were somewhat underserved relative to seeing technologies flowing out that would go into startups. So we felt that running it as an accelerator, which would be an 8-week program, they would go through our Fire Starter program at the Foundry. We'd have an entrepreneur in residence assigned to them. But this would better position those technologies, whether they were a company founded by a student, a graduate student, undergraduate student, or a researcher, if we could run it as an accelerator. So each semester, we have an open application period, and probably the best news of all, we've done 9 investments in companies that are commercializing those technologies, but we're averaging somewhere between 10 and 15 applications each semester. So there's a great deal of interest, a high amount of companies that are looking for that seed funding. So every semester it's a $100,000 accelerator. We have a panel of judges that serve as an investment committee that are made up equally of folks internal to Purdue, from the College of Agriculture, from the Purdue Foundry, from the research parks, as well as we bring in usually 3 guest venture capitalists each semester to assist us in that process, as well as folks from AgriNovus. So it's been a great experience. I've certainly learned a great deal in the ag space. It's really a very hot space. You're seeing more and more ag funds cropping up across the country. We've gotten a lot of attention from them, given what we're doing at the earliest stage. But it's been real exciting to see some of these companies start to really evolve.
So based on what you're saying, I mean, my next question is, what is that pipeline? What is that, how many ideas, how many companies are out there in the ag space, looking for funding? And what you're saying is there are lots of ideas out there and lots of potential companies out there.
Lots of ideas, and I think something like the advent of the accelerator is causing a lot of people that are doing research to start to think in terms of creating more ideas, more innovations, now that they see that there's a path to funding. So again, I think if we measure our success to date through the accelerator, it's been in a number of applications. When we have our open application period again this September, I expect to see another 15 to 20 companies come about. But maybe the other thing that's been significant is that the 9 that we've invested in really kind of represent a great spectrum of technologies in the ag space. Everything from Phycrobe with a technology that can quickly determine contamination in produce, to a company like Progeny, which is doing high-tech imaging from drones for crop analysis, to Vinsense, which does soil analytics based on big data. They're serving the wine industry currently. So we've just seen a great deal of those technologies that impact the plant sciences, some of which come directly out of the College of Agriculture, but others that may come from the College of Electrical Engineering, as an example, that have an application in the ag space.
Are there other funding sources that you, as you look more broadly around the state of Indiana, more funding sources that could help benefit the ag space?
Yeah, I think so. We work very closely with Elevate Ventures through our Elevate Purdue Foundry Fund, which is another one of our seed funds, and a number of these ag companies, emerging ag companies, have had the opportunity to pitch to Elevate. Some of the other funds within the state, whether it's High Alpha or Alos or any of the others, also we stay close to, and they know what we have going on. But then also around the Midwest, there's more, an increasing number of ag funds that are viewing Indiana as a place for them to stay close to. So this Ag-Celerator investment committee that we put together with outside VCs has been actually very heartening. We've had them from St. Louis, we've had them from Memphis, we've had them from Chicago, we've actually had them from the West Coast as well, all with an interest in the ag space that have led to further connections and actually up to and including diligence on some of the companies.
As we wrap up, John, I think it's probably safe to say you're bullish on the future, especially when it comes to innovation, to entrepreneurs in the ag space.
Absolutely, and for me personally, the creation of and the management of the Accelerator has just been proof positive of that. The number of applications, I can't stress that enough, but the success of the companies, a number of them which are now revenue live, I just see this growing. I see no slowing of it. In fact, if anything, the use of this as a seed fund has done exactly what it's supposed to do, which is just to start to trigger activity, which ultimately is going to cause more capital to flow into the state.
Very good. John Hanak is the managing director of Purdue Ventures, part of the Purdue Foundry. And John, always great to see you. Thanks for being part of the podcast this week.
Thank you, Gerry.
All right. Well, that does it for another edition of the Ag+Bio+Science podcast. A look at food, science, and technology coming together to impact the state of Indiana. I'm Gerry Dick. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.
This podcast is a product of Inside Indiana Business, hosted by Gerry Dick, produced by Libby Fritz and Joe Ullery, and was recorded on location at Launch Fishers. More people get Indiana business news from Inside Indiana Business than any other source.